Welcome, Sydney Christensen. You're here with the label Kill Rockstars. Maybe you can just explain your role. What is your usual work right now?
Cool. I'm VP of Project Management, so that's kind of the umbrella term for handling all sorts of things, fingers in a lot of different pots. My main bit would be hiring publicity teams, and when we don't hire publicity teams, I'm the in-house publicist. I hire the radio teams, and I help coordinate the artists getting everything handed in and submitted to the label, and sending that off to publicity teams, radio teams. I help with A&R, and I also manage special projects. So if we organize a festival or some special something or other on YouTube, I'll help organize that.
Do you have a favorite thing to do? Because there are so many.
I thought you were going to ask me if I have a favorite artist just right away, which, you weren't supposed to do.
No.
I totally do, but I won't say who it is. I love doing in-house publicity. I think it's really fun, because typically when we hire a publicist, of course, they're just working the one campaign. But to be the in-house publicist, I'll represent a punk band and then a singer-songwriter the other day. But the email address, the sender's name is all the same. And so you kind of establish this connection with different outlets and represent the label in like all the different genres that we manage instead of just like this one side. So I like doing in-house publicity. It's my favorite. It's a lot of connections and nice conversations.
So the difference between in-house and not in-house is that you do the publicity yourself and don't hire somebody to do it, right?
Yeah, correct. There's a bunch of different publicity teams with multiple different publicists on each team, and you can hire them kind of as a contractor, and they can do the work for you.
And you already talked about special projects you did. Maybe you can talk about what's special or what's like a special festival or something
Okay.
you did.
The biggest and one of the most recent was organizing our showcase at South by Southwest and organizing the panel that we did there. So that was back in March in Austin, Texas, of course. And I think we had 14 different artists. We had 2 stages. It was a lot. It was a lot, especially for kind of just one person. But so many of our artists came through, and it was right after the pandemic lifted up. And so everybody was just unbelievably excited to gather in Austin, Texas, like a rowdy place, and play their music finally in front of all these people. It was packed. It was a lot of fun. Another one that was somewhat recent was we did a Pride Month series in the United States, which is where the label is based. Pride Month is June. I think it's July here. So in June, every week we had different artists send in videos, and we launched them as premieres on YouTube. And then we did it as a donation drive to the Tegan and Sarah Foundation. So I had to coordinate all the campaigning around that and making sure the charity was all good to go, getting the videos submitted from the artists. Yeah.
To step back a little, how would you describe your label Kill Rockstars? You always said punk, but it has a lot of genres, right?
It does, yeah. We still say punk, even though a lot of the artists that we're representing right now aren't necessarily punk artists, but 31 years ago when the label was founded, we always say it's like our catchline. We were founded on DIY and punk roots, and so those sorts of ethos are still what we hold true to today. But now all the genres, they vary incredibly. We've even worked some pretty like synth poppy stuff this last year, which we haven't done a whole lot of before. Singer-songwriters, we have a really special announcement coming September 8th that I haven't told anyone about, and we're going to announce Kill Rockstars Nashville. So we're going to be leaning into Americana stuff, which is going to be pretty amazing too. It's like a label offshoot. So lots of genres. We obviously couldn't pick a favorite. We love them all, so it's fun.
Like you said, you released Bikini Kill, Elliot Smith, Gossip. I guess everybody knows that band, and Beth Ditto.
Oh, yeah.
How important is it for a label to have a legacy like that?
Oh man, it's incredibly important, and we represent Elliot Smith still, but Bikini Kill, they started their own label, and so they're doing their own thing. But so many artists will now slide into our DMs, and they'll approach us with like, we're huge fans of Elliot Smith, or we're huge fans of Gossip, and that's why they found us in the first place. So I think those sorts of artists have established such a fandom that artists who are looking for representation, of course, will follow where their favorite artist was represented by. So that sort of legacy is really important because we attract those fans that listen to that kind of music and those sorts of artists. And those sorts of artists stood for something just absolutely incredible that their followers like. So it just makes like this snowball effect. It's nice.
But do you see it becoming like less and less important? Like, what did a label do? Because the panel you will speak here is also called a label. What is it good for?
I think what labels do now, it's very different, but I still, of course, fall on the side of the argument that labels are important. And even though now we have a more varied fan base, we still, now our legacy as of like the last year, we're pretty queer identifying, and just being able to represent so many queer artists is incredible. And so it's changed over the years. It's very different than it was 31 years ago. In fact, I wasn't even alive when the label started, to be honest. And yeah, so different legacy, but it's still very important.
And except of the artists you signed, what has changed over the last year within the label, you would say? Because it's like over 30 years old. It's like pretty old label, right? Yeah,
it is a pretty old label, and we haven't missed a beat, I don't think. Since the pandemic is now loosened up a little bit, touring is finally on the table, and we've run into a lot of roadblocks trying to find different booking agents and tour managers, those sorts of things. And it's something that we've been unprepared for. You know, we didn't really think that coming back into the touring world would be such a difficult time, but we're really struggling finding the teams that we need for a number of reasons. I guess the two main ones are a lot of booking agencies, the smaller boutique ones, had to shut down during the pandemic, obviously because of no revenue coming in. So those ones shut down, and then the other ones that have stayed open are getting a surplus of all these artists needing the representation. It's hard. It's changed a lot, and just being a label and being kind of the coordinator of all these artists, you have to act quick and be on your toes and figure out ways to manage it. And so we're kind of messing around with in-house booking, which is hard. Booking a tour is so hard, especially if you're like trying to release the record. So yeah, I think the touring landscape is what has changed the most in the last year, if that answered your question.
Yeah, I mean, you can also talk like before Corona, what has changed like in label work, because I think the major thing is that you can just release your music without label right now.
Yeah.
And 5 or 10 years ago that wasn't possible. So I think, what do you see, like how should a label work right now? What can a label do for me except of releasing the music right now?
Yeah. I'll answer this in two different ways. First, the thing that's changed the most within the last 5-10 years is the way that we discover music. I joked earlier that people slide into our DMs, but seriously, we find so many incredible artists that way, whether it be Instagram or Twitter, and we've signed a lot of artists that way. It's cool. And then the second part of the question, how was I going to answer that? Say your question again, and I'll be prepared.
Like what can you do for me as an artist?
Oh yeah, of course.
Why should I sign?
I think the strongest thing that a label can provide, and I could answer this completely different tomorrow, but our connections to distribution. We'll be able to get you a distribution team not only in the country that you're from, but hopefully overseas, and get it in storefronts. It's a wild market trying to get your record into stores, and even just to press it onto vinyl. It's, as I'm sure most people know right now, the vinyl delay is a really huge issue, and being a solo artist makes it even more difficult to get into the pressing plants. But labels have these connections established already, and we know how to talk to the manufacturers, we know how to get it into stores, we know how to ship it overseas. And also, we've worked with so many different artists throughout the years. We know the different roadblocks and the different hurdles that artists will face. We've experienced nearly all of them, whereas an independent artist, every roadblock that they run into, it's like you have to reinvent the wheel a little bit. But having the team behind you, you have a bunch of different personalities that can help you troubleshoot this landscape that's really impossible to navigate.
And for the live touring, did you find solutions also without the team? Did you do, I don't know, something like live stream, or what, was there some kind of compensation for not being able to tour? Yeah,
we tried our best to do successful live streaming events. I think it's really hard to do a successful live stream event unless you're Rihanna, just because you could forget that it happens, or you could be like staying on your phone a little bit longer with your mom and miss it entirely. So we tried our best, but it's not the same. You don't really get the audience that you would hope. even with our amount of subscribers on YouTube, we would still just get the smallest fraction of that who would actually show up and pay attention. And it takes so much work, so it's just kind of disheartening. But I guess that can be true about live shows too. You think you have a big audience and you go to some weird city and you have your mom in the crowd because she followed you, but that, you know, so yeah, live streaming, we tried our best, but it's difficult, and I think it's discouraging for artists without that connection that you get from the live audience.
But how about if you get a booking done and the concert can take place? Is there like also a huge no-show rate, and is it difficult to get people into the concert venue right now in the US, or how do you see that?
No, I think people are really excited to go to concerts right now. The one problem with the landscape, the time right now, is so many artists are touring because they've been pent up for, 2 or 3 years. And so now you might be in Los Angeles and have 6 different artists or 6 different shows to choose from. So you might be missing out on some fans that way because of the selection and the problem of overabundance. But as far as moods go, I think people are really driven to attend shows. We've been pent up for too long.
You live in Berlin right now, and do you also focus on the music industry right now here? And do you see differences between the German and the US music industry landscape?
Yeah, I've noticed differences that I'm still trying to understand a little bit. I guess even just being able to coming here, I'm still learning it, and I'm still struggling to even recognize the differences. I feel really far behind in the music industry here and what's going on. It takes a lot of catching up because it is so different. So I think I'm still trying to find my footing and figure out different ways to connect. But I guess, okay, this ties into the original prompt of what a label can do. You can see these connections happen across the world. So I wouldn't be here if it wasn't for the label and my job, and I think a lot of different artists might also find those opportunities. They could go somewhere entirely new, but because of the label connection, you can introduce yourself to so many different people. But anyway, no, I'm still trying to learn the German landscape.
We already talked about tools like live streaming. Did you discover others? For example, I mean, TikTok is a pretty big deal, but I think for punk it's more difficult than for hip-hop to use it, right?
Yeah, I think artists are not really driven to the social media platforms, on our label at least. A lot of artists don't fancy it, and so it's a matter of motivating them to use it, because it does help a lot and so many people discover music that way, but artists are sometimes reluctant to use it.
And how do you still get the name out? I mean, you cannot only do the publicity part, right? You have to get more reminders out. Don't you see it like that? Yeah, I'm smiling because that's the golden egg. That's what everybody is trying to do. How to get your name out, how to get your artist's name out. And honestly, this is not a helpful answer for artists. It's so much about the right time and the right place. You could have a huge success on college radio and no one really paid attention to the press. Or you could have a huge success on press and that's how people discovered you. But it's all about the right time and the right place. And how did you get your successes within the last years without social media? We've had some DJs pay attention, some NPR DJs that have really helped. Another prominent radio station is KXP in Seattle. We love them. They're awesome. We used to be based in Portland, and so the Pacific Northwest thing is awesome. But yeah, getting DJs to recognize and give artists a chance to do in stores or in studios really helps. What is in studios? Oh, in studios, so a radio station who might host the band and set up and do like a radio streaming event, I guess, and sometimes an interview as well. So your focus is on radio? And publicity and social media. Yeah, we kind of got to cover all the bases because you never know who's paying attention to what, and we're just hoping to find people who pay attention to all the different outlets. And the radio landscape in the US, do you see a decline or something because now everybody is using Spotify or other DSPs, or do you think like in 10 years radio still will be one major player for you? It ebbs and flows, to be honest. Sometimes you'll see a huge decrease in anybody paying attention to radio, and then sometimes you'll realize that fans are sick of using Spotify and paying Spotify. They'd rather go a little bit more old school and listen to radio. College radio is really, really important in the United States. I think it's hopefully something that will never die off.
that's really how a lot of these artists will get their start before we go to, so non-com radio is kind of the next level to radio after college, and AAA. These are just different formats of radio, but you've got...
What is AAA?
It's like adult alternative. So it's,
okay.
And that kind of, those will be different target stations than college radio, of course. So you kind of have to plant your seed in college radio and keep working and hopefully get the attention to these other stations. So it's still very important, and we prioritize it. I love radio. It's fun.
How do you see the future for single versus albums?
Oh, I think we're already seeing the future, to be honest. I'm such an album fan, and so I'm going to just answer this with a bias, but I think right now with the streaming platforms, it's so great on representing singles. You can release just one single and get promoted to playlists. You don't necessarily need the whole album to be discovered. And so artists, well, okay, and then there's the algorithm thing. If you don't release a song every about 2 months-ish, the algorithm will kind of fall off of your back and you'll get lost, I guess. And so you have to keep this algorithm going, which means you have to keep releasing these singles. And so we are in the future of singles being incredibly important and albums kind of trickling out of importance, which breaks my heart.
And how important is the music video?
Also a good question. The last 6 months, and I don't know why, we've found that instead of music videos, live videos are actually more successful.
Really?
Yeah, with the live audio as well. So it's always tough because if you send a press release, you of course want to focus on like one bit to click to, just so you don't split everybody's traffic up. And live videos are really successful and fans really like them, but then that doesn't help promote the actual recording of the audio. But live recordings, awesome. Music videos are helpful because you can use the original audio. But right now, we're quite liking live recordings, whether it be in someone's basement or at a show, any variation. But fans love them.
But did you also use like Twitch or something? Like I asked before, did you try out some new stuff? Maybe apart from social media, maybe there's something I never heard of.
No, we wanted to use Twitch, but then for different live streams, and then when the time came, we just realized it would be easiest to stick to where our fans are. We don't really have a Twitch, and so we didn't see the need to try to pull all the audience over. We'd love to explore more of these different platforms because they can be useful in very different ways than YouTube or streaming platforms can be, but we just haven't experimented yet.
I think it's also very difficult to become a Twitch user with music, but is there like something like a Twitch radio station, like some moderator you pitch to? So I mean, is Twitch becoming also like a radio outlet, because still you can very easily right now use Twitch, I think, for music and just play it without being flagged or something like YouTube would do.
Yeah.
Is that a thing, or don't you see that very much?
I don't know if it's a thing. It's not anything that we've ever pursued, but I wouldn't be surprised if that exists. There's third-party companies for nearly every single thing that you can think of, including pitching your songs to playlist creators on Spotify and different DSPs. So I'm sure that probably exists.
And what would you advise, like, upcoming artists? What should they do? You already said release like every 2 months. Is there something you would also advise them, or you do every time?
It is all about work ethic. Labels will try their very, very best to help you along, but it's easy to tell right away what artists really want it and will put in the work versus the ones that don't. And the ones who put in work will see success. It boils down to that. Not always, of course, there are the sad cases, but it's all about work ethic. And labels want to work with someone who is just as excited about the music as they are, and the business of the music, because it is music business. It's not just you putting in time in the studio. It's you putting in time in all the promotional elements. And labels want the artist to help. So help yourself out and work a little bit, and you'll be great.
Get educated about the business. Maybe you have something for that. What should I do money-wise? Because it's now harder to get money, especially if I cannot play a concert and I only have maybe a DSP and not so much money money-wise. What would your advice be?
I know the laws vary a little bit from Europe and the United States, but generally it's the same. you must understand different rights and how to manage different rights. It's a beast of a conversation. It's a whole lot to digest. It will take you probably like a year of studying it for it to really sink in. But once you understand your rights, you'll be able to understand, and I mean like how to register as a songwriter and your songwriting rights, and a publishing company. Register as a publishing company if you don't have one, because the way that the song gets split up, money will get paid to the songwriter and the publisher if you aren't set up, and this is where it might vary a little bit in Europe. If you aren't registered with a publisher or as a publisher, that 50% cut from the song goes nowhere. It's wild. It's something that publishing companies, I think, created a long time ago. So register as a publisher. But then if you know that, you hopefully know your rights, and you'll be able to figure out all these different ways that you can make yourself more proficient, I guess.
About music rights, in February 2022, the music company Acceleration Music has acquired the catalog of Kill Rockstars. How did that change the label?
You did your research. That's cool. It honestly hasn't changed it too much. There was an article, well, I won't name names. Some articles have named it as like this huge change. My boss is still the same. But Acceleration, they're basically like a label family. And so with Acceleration, since they're a bigger company, we actually have more money, which helps artists. But the dynamic between like the small team of Kill Rockstars has changed the same. Sometimes I just email the cool press that we get to different people. So it's just expanded the family circle a little bit, but not in a way that is honestly felt too much. I know that probably sounds like a fake answer, but it's true. It's about the same. Yeah, I know.
But you have more money, that's good. Did you also run into any policy issues with the name Kill Rockstars? I mean, if you upload something to Spotify, sometimes even an album cover can get you into trouble. But with something like Kill in your name and having a sampler called like that?
Yeah. I've been meaning to ask my boss all the different times that he's ran into this. In the digital age, it's impossible to run ads with Kill in it. But it's not as big of a problem as you would think. We do have an artist whose name is Bitch. It is her chosen name. It's her artist name. It's not used as a curse word. It's her name. And it's impossible to promote any of her albums. And her album's called Bitchcraft. And so we couldn't even promote that. So everyone listened to Bitch because she's awesome. And, you know, the digital gods won't let us promote her stuff.
So if you don't want to do any social media as an artist, you should call yourself Bitch or something like that.
Yes, totally. No, no, it makes it so hard. It's discouraging. You can't even run tour ads. You know, Bitch goes on tour. Pfft, that won't even go through the filters. Yeah, it makes it tough. So you got to be careful with your name. Unless you don't give a shit, then it's okay.
Okay. What is your what are your wishes for the music industry in the future?
This is so far-fetched, but I would love if artists could get paid more. And if fans could actually purchase music. That's all.
Okay.
And world peace.
Finally. Okay, if you don't want to add anything, then Sydney Christensen. Kristen or Christian then? Kristen then, right?
Christensen.
Christian then.
Yeah, it's Danish. I don't know. Say it however you want. It's okay.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you.
And that's it.
That's all I've got.